keep yeah, little bit so I think we probably might miss Roshan, because Roshan is not I think he's gone for a meeting. However, more or less I think we are okay. So now let me just figure this out. One second, just give me a moment. We're trying to go live. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Gyatso.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes.
Just hold on. Huh? We're just setting it up. Just give me one moment. So Vikram is joining in some time. He said he needs another 5 minutes to be here. What we're going to do is basically take our agenda now and go and kind of like just bring everything into the fore. I will quickly, so this is how we set it up. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So hello and welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. I think we can start now. We have enough people here. I would suggest all the panelists to kind of like just mute it if possible. We are trying to get onto probably Facebook Live, but however, there is some issue that is kind of taking time. So today we are going to cover few things. Basically, this COVID season, we've seen there's a lot of issues in terms of where we are as humanity as such. I mean, you know, we've been 7.35 billion people for the first time experiencing almost you know, extinction in that particular sense. So our panel, very quickly on our agenda, we have that we're going to talk about is on tourism and hospitality and how it's going to impact us, and especially being from you know, the even though we have a lot of audiences joining from all over the world, but there is this segment which basically is kind of like pretty niche and towards more focus around the Indian Himalayan region. And with that being said, I just want to project this out there that recent survey by I mean CRISIL and Bloomberg Quint had basically kind of like done the survey, which indicates, if you see the indicators that show that are very highly vulnerable, are the category of people that are in the industry of accommodation and food services, which is related to tourism, and also the transport business, right? So we have a big problem in that sense, and it's and the other industries are also maybe marginally or maybe more or less impacted, but these are the large indicators. Having said that, we have done a survey of our own also, which basically can kind of like put things into perspective, at least to put this into perspective for us right now. And in that you have, we asked about 10 questions. It was filled up by a couple of people, around 76 responses. And in this, you can see that the questions that are related are basically, we asked around tourism and do you operate a tourism related business? You see the bias is towards homestay hotels, which are residential, restaurant, cafes, tour and travel, flight ticket booking, taxi, vehicle rental, etc. And so these are all the businesses that are tremendously impacted immediately. I mean, in terms of the number of people, in terms of the scale. So the next question was, where is it located? So there is a bias, which is more of a Sikkim bias, obviously, because even from the panel, etc., you can see that there is that kind of bias. However, in this, you have people from Ladakh, from Kargil, from Bangalore, Kalimpong, Bhutan, South Karnataka, everybody responding. But a lot of respondents from East Sikkim. Gender, obviously there's a difference in gender also, and you have 77% the guys who responded versus the females. Most of these businesses have about 1 to 10 employees. There are very few that have employed more than 100 odd people. And the other question was, how negatively has COVID-19 pandemic affected your business on a scale of 0 through 10? So 0 being no impact and 10 being maximum impact. And you can see that most of the businesses have said it has negatively impacted their business. And in most of the cases, when you pick up number 10, it basically means you have to shut down all through the process of during lockdown, and probably that creates another income shock that again percolates down to that entire ecosystem that you can take forward. The other question was, were you able to help your employees retain a job during the COVID-19 lockdown? And some said yes, basically around 40% said yes, 60% said no. They had to let go. So that is another disruption in jobs that's happening as we speak. And the other question was more on in terms of policy, that what we were looking for, and we kind of asked that question, whether these kind of tax reforms, soft credit loan from banks, etc., and the government also kind of is doing its best and running a lot of interventions. So will there be a big impact on the tourism sector? And 64% of the respondents said yes. There was very few who were still very pessimistic if these tax reforms and soft credit loans were given, and yet would not be able to build up their business in that sense. So this question is framed around the premise that if you have been given that facility, will you be able to take it up or not? Then do you have an active learning and skill development program in your business? You have almost kind of 50-50. Some said yes, some said no. It kind of ranges under the 50-50. Do employees have insurance do your employees have insurance? And they said 90% said no. You had very little this thing. And the other thing was, have you created a crisis management mechanism and strategy for a business? And most of them said no. So with this, we have a bunch of people, very esteemed panelists with us. So I would like, so in no particular order, but just I think based on seniority, I would like to ask former MP Subs PD Rai to basically taking this into consideration in the context to kind of lead the way. I'm not going to give a big introduction, but one thing that I will say is, apart from being the former MP also, you are on the governing council of IMI, and you are Integrated Mountain Initiative, and also a leading force behind ECOSS. So with that, I would give the floor to you, sir. Please go ahead. I'll stay on mute.
Thank you, Karma, and thank you for having this very timely kind of. Can I see my face somewhere?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So you're able to see everyone? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So very timely, webinar in which you are trying to posit the COVID crisis against a huge problematic, which is impacting everyone from, globally. I mean, the World Tourism Council, Trade and Travel and Tourism Council has also estimated that about almost 50 million jobs are at stake, and most of them are in Asia. And if you come back to, say, looking at it from the point of view of just the mountain states, I think the states of Jammu Kashmir, the state of Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Meghalaya are most impacted because I think we definitely depended a lot. Our people really depended a lot on the on tourism as a livelihood option. And your your survey says it all in terms of that it's just like falling off the cliff. And and the kind of the kind of thinking that is going on around the world is that other sectors, maybe manufacturing and maybe other sectors may see a revival almost immediately, or maybe in the next 6 months or 1 year. But the proponents of who look at all these things, like the economists and others, I think see the tourism sector coming back only after a couple of years. So the real question therefore is what happens and how do we really get back into shape as we move along? And I think we had dwelt upon this livelihood issue in a webinar earlier as well for the mountain states. And it turns out that most of the people the panelists who were speaking and very senior persons felt that the only way is to ensure that there is, in the short run, that there is some government intervention. And you mentioned very clearly that if government can give some kind of moratorium in terms of the loans that have been taken, in terms of, and especially in the transportation sector, where lots of young people have actually taken up, the loans and built up a fleet of cars and vehicles, which are now just, gathering dust. So this kind of a situation is unprecedented. It is something that we will probably have to look at. But I also want to bring in one more factor, Karma, and after which I will, leave the floor. And that is the whole, the serious threat of climate change. I mean, we are just looking at COVID only. But COVID means that down the line, probably after a year or a year and a half, we are going to see a vaccine and perhaps we are going to go to business as usual. But climate change is going to be something that is going to stalk us for the next 20, 30 years. And there is no vaccine for climate change. And so therefore, one of the suggestions which I see a lot of young people also who talk to me, from the hospitality sector, saying that that this window of opportunity we have to utilize to ensure that the next, we build more robust tourism products which perhaps are more, in alignment with the kind of social distancing, to see that it is more in alignment with natural, going into natural areas, and to see that ecotourism and other such like responsible tourism is something that which we need to see. And above all, I think it is the question of how we will manage hygiene and the health, public health. I think public health and hygiene are going to be very, very crucial at this particular juncture. So in the intervening period, government must step forward and ensure that there is some way that some of these livelihoods and jobs are either transferred to other sectors, as well as, you have a reskilling of people. On the other hand, long-term basis, we have to factor in climate change. We have to factor in green skills, and we have to factor in the fact that public health is going to be uppermost. So I'll stop there, and then maybe we could come back for questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, sir. And also generally public service announcement. If you have any question answers, you can put it in the Q&A section. This is for all the people who are joining us right now. You can put in your questions, and some of those questions will be picked up to be answered. So Hari, so next is Hari. So Hari wears a lot of hats. One of them as the founder of HolidayIQ, and from that particular perspective, I know you are right now a little bit on the sabbatical side of things after having successfully sold HolidayIQ to one of the largest tour businesses, I guess, digital business in Europe. So I want you to take off from where the former MP has basically laid it out, and also the contextualize it, because you've been to Sikkim a couple of times. You are interested in the mountains, so contextualize it for us. You have about 3 minutes. You can start now.
Can you hear me, Karma?
Yeah, absolutely. We all can.
Okay, perfect. So Karma, thanks a lot for the sort of chance to do this. So as the MP Saab sort of started off, and I think he set the context for this. I think there are two dimensions to this whole thing. One, of course, is the the immediate problem of probably in the next 2 years, and I want to call that immediate, although it's a long period of 2 years. And then, of course, connecting it to the larger context of climate change and the various aspects that affect, the mountain states and tourism. So I think that kind of sets a context for what I'm going to say. I'm going to look at this from a sort of an hard industry perspective. And the way I look at it is that the primary implication of this COVID, the fact that this happened just now, is on demand. So everything that we talk about, we have to talk about in relation to the fact that demand is going to change. And in my mind, demand is going to change in two ways. One, demand is going to obviously crumble, right? It's already crumbled, and how long will it take to come back? So one aspect is the sheer volume of demand. The second question is the nature of demand. What I mean by that is what will be the product that will sell in the future versus what is the product that we have today. And I think I'll just touch upon these two. The one distinction I will make about the event that we have in front of us, which is the COVID crisis, is that there are going to be a set of things that are going to happen because this crisis happened. That is directly related to this crisis. The second set of things are actually those things that were kind of trends in the background, and the fact that this crisis happened has accelerated those trends. And I think those trends are going to become much more prominent going into the future. So I'm going to look at both of these things, both in the short run and in the medium run. So that's just sort of how I think about it, how I look at it. So I think let me start with the most obvious and the most immediate problem, which is really saying there is an existing demand that's fallen off the cliff. And what is it that we can do to bring it back? There's only so much that the destination can do to bring it back, because it really depends on when the customer is ready to travel. There are 2 points that I think are important in the short run. When I say short run, I mean 2 years. One is clearly the issue of hygiene. So, whoever is going to come back is going to come back only if there is a very high degree of comfort that hygiene of the nature that people have now come to expect after this will be in place. So it is not just a matter of ensuring that the hygiene is there, which of course is paramount, but it's equally about communicating that it is there. And I believe that in things like that, government or industry associations, etc., have a role to play, because this is going to be about trust and people feeling comfortable that that is there. So I would imagine that the industry and government have to come together to be able to certify, so to speak, about hygiene, and I think that will have to be an important part of this mix. The second thing is that I think we have to be, in the short run, in the next 2 years, think about which markets will actually come to our destination. My own view is that long haul markets are dead for 2 years, which means that if people have to take a flight, let's say for 2 hours or 3 hours, and then take a car and so on and so forth and get to your destination, the chances are that won't happen. It is much more likely that personal transport, car, etc., that people can drive for 4 hours, 5 hours to the destination is the source market that you can aim for. It has big implications, I think, for the mountain states, because each state will have the destination, will have to see which really is going to be its source market in the next 2 years. So I think that those are the kind of 2, I would say, immediate sort of issues to look at. But to my mind, in the longer term, there's actually a more deeper product problem or a product opportunity, whichever way one looks at it, that's available, which is that, for long haul destinations, I would take Sikkim as an example, where I would imagine that a significant portion of Sikkim's spending tourist does come from, a slightly long haul destination, whether it is the northern India, whether it's the cities of northern India, whether it's Delhi, the metros, Bangalore, etc., etc. There is a significant paying customer sitting there. Now, that customer increasingly is going to demand, so that customer will be the customer that will take flights and come to places like this, for the simple reason that flight prices are going to reasonably certainly rise in the next few years. So if flight costs are going to rise in the next few years, long haul travel will be restricted to people who can afford a much higher, sort of level of cost in transportation and the overall holiday than we see today. So long haul destinations like Sikkim will have to necessarily start focusing on the upmarket consumer who can afford long haul travel. And that, I think, demands actually slightly a change of product. What does it mean to say that, we will start to sort of deliver a product to the upmarket tourism consumer? It's not just having a fancy resort, although that is a good starting point. And I would imagine that that's an area in which a lot of work would have to be done, even in places like Sikkim. But beyond that, there's a lot of things that will have to be done to craft a product that creates value for the upmarket traveler. So essentially, to summarize, I think there are two broad themes that I'm seeing here. In the short run, to keep the fires burning and to keep things going to the best of our ability, focus on demand which is nearby, and try to get as big a sort of sense of trust in the hygiene issue as possible, step one. But in the medium term, think about a more important pivoting of the nature of the product itself that we have for tourism. And for a state like Sikkim, for example, I think that product will now have to slowly, gradually transform from a mass market tourism product to a much more niche and possibly upmarket product for all the reasons that I mentioned. And that's really how I see demand and product playing out.
Okay. Thanks, Hari. Very insightful. And especially from the factor of trust, I think it makes, because the brokerage of trust now, I think, is going to be paramount, So anybody that can play in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and figure out where you can play as a trust broker, I think is going to be a key in the business. On this same topic, so to take this conversation forward, I would welcome Vikram Gupta ji. Vikram ji is a good friend of mine, head of one of the largest venture capital firms in India, indigenous, IIT alumni, and is sitting a nice mahogany, mahogany. It looks like the Oval Office at the back. So Vikram ji, most people don't know you. You're a fantastic singer too, and we've had some good times. So yeah, please go ahead. And your perspective, I would like to kind of like see your input into the one is basically the trust and the trust brokerage. The other one is basically from an entrepreneurial perspective, how pivots, basically the pivots that young entrepreneurs should make. And you've been to Sikkim, so so please take it forward. You have 3 minutes.
No, thank you. Thank you, Karma, for having me here. And I think looking at your background, I feel like coming to Sikkim, sooner than later. I think I can say missing Sikkim. But I think, I look at this whole thing as, as an investor, and we've been investing across various sectors. And on one side, as Hari mentioned, there are lots of challenges, specifically from the demand perspective. I think I also see a supply side issue a little bit, actually, given the way situation is right now. But there's definitely a much bigger problem in terms of the mindsets of the people. I mean, do they want to travel? Where do they want to travel, if at all? And when will they start traveling? So I think there are lots of questions with respect to that. I, as an investor and an entrepreneur, actually believe that such times are also times to rethink, reboot, and re-strategize. And I think this is an opportunity. And if I look at specifically from Sikkim's perspective, and I think I would look at two aspects. And I think Mr. P.D. Rai mentioned something very, very critical and important is the issue of climate change. And which is not just like a 1 year, 2 year problem. I think this is going to become an increasing problem over the next 10 years. And people are not realizing it yet. But, in fact, that's the primary reason the next fund we are setting up is actually around the sustainability development goals, addressing the specific climate change, environment, water problems and things like those, and then marrying that to specific investment objectives and then seeing how we can really, make an impact in a much bigger way. So I think one needs to think about, how to really play to your strengths. And I think Sikkim, in my view, has a lot of strengths that one can look at, and I think we can play to our advantage. One of them is being an organic state. There is probably an opportunity, while you will see a much larger decrease of, tourist inflow. Of course, there will be a lot of available capacities in terms of the minds of the entrepreneurs available to rethink the models where is it possible to really, position in much sharper way the organic aspect of Sikkim and then, really take that to the global scale. And the second aspect is, from the climate change perspective, is it possible to make Sikkim as a center of excellence, maybe with the global prominence, to really showcase to the world, what all can be done and what needs to be done. And in the process, I think once you actually create that kind of positioning, the tourism that you create over a period of time will be of a very different nature. That then you will have the people who wanting to come there is not just for the change of the weather or, just feeling the place. I think people who want to come with a very specific objective, and even your segments in terms of what kinds of customers would want to visit. I think you probably will have much larger inflow from international travelers as compared to just the domestic travelers. So I think it's a good time to rethink, re-strategize, reboot, and think of strength, which really, I would believe, a state like Sikkim has, and it's a very unique strength as compared to any other state in India. And of course, there are going to be challenges with respect to the entire, how people get there, the mode of transportation, and other things. But I think once you establish the fundamental value proposition, which actually changes from, just focusing on bringing the masses versus bringing a very different mindset, I think then your focus can be very different in terms of the mode of transportation and, the infrastructure around that and how you make sure that you develop further around that. So that's broadly the way I look at it.
Thank you, Vikram. Yeah. So now the next, very, very poignant, very relevant. I think with that in mind, we'll come through another series of questions now at the second round. I would like to call upon our Madam Yangchen, who is the General Secretary of TAAS, Travel, TAAS, Travel, what's the, of TAAS, Sikkim. And so basically Travel Association.
Travel
Yeah,
Agent Association of Sikkim.
Yes, Travel Agents. I couldn't get the word agents here. Travel Agents Association of Sikkim. Yeah. So she is going to outline, and she's the General Secretary there, and she spent almost practically her entire life in the tourism trade. So, and also one of the first registered guides, which I found very, very impressive. And she's not only here to create this particular, create diversity in our panel in terms of gender representation, but also with the insights of the amount of years that she's been in the business. So Yangchen, why don't you talk about the kind of issues that are coming up, especially what the lockdown brought? I mean, because there's a lot of income shock that we've seen. globally the data also doesn't look good. So how has COVID affected everything? And so what has your experience been?
Hello everyone. Actually, I'm in a meeting right now. We are having a meeting. We just finished. They just finished the meeting. So this is our third meeting with all the stakeholders of Sikkim. We have already met officers from tourism department, officers from industry, commerce and industry. So what we are trying to do is we are approaching all those departments who are going to help us. In fact, even our proposal has already been submitted to the Honorable Chief Minister of Sikkim by Tourism Department through our Tourism Minister. So as we all know that Sikkim, 80% people, we are dependent on tourism. Me being a travel agent, plus I'm also a transporter. I also run a small guest house in northern part of Sikkim called Lachung. So like now is the time where I have to pay my lease amount. So I have to pay my office rent, which I'm paying 15,000 per month. It's in the heart of the town. So I don't know how I'm going to survive after May. I don't know whether I have to leave that office, because we never know when this is going to like get over. Right now I'm looking only 2 years. We don't know how, until and unless if we don't get the vaccine, we really don't know what is going to happen. So we have a lot of complaints coming from the drivers, the travel agent, hotel, homestay owner, all this tourism stakeholder, even those small restaurants where they just sell Maggie, or those small vendors or small stalls where they run those traditional costume which we wear. They are also impact they have been impacted very badly. So they are around like SHRA Hotel Association. I think Madam Sradha will brief you about it. In fact, they have already submitted the proposal to the CM as well. So we stakeholder with other association, like we have luxury vehicle Innova Xylo, which comes under Z number. We have paragliding. We have a lot of other associations. So we are coming under one roof, and we are going to approach our Chief Minister again. And today we had a meeting where we are going to make a team who's going to approach the government. In fact, this has already been done by in commerce and industry and tourism, but still we are also trying from our end as well. So we have approached the government with 8 to 10 points where we have asked for soft loan, maybe 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs to the government from our, we have Sikkim bank, we have other cooperative bank which is run by our government. So we have approached that. We have approached about GST. We have approached about our EMI. So even the house, this office rent, which we are going to pay to our owner, we have approached that as well. But it really depends because the owner himself taken a loan and has constructed that hotel or a building. So we have approached our government. So now this is a short term which we are thinking right now. Regarding the long term, what we have thought about is there are a lot of things which tourism now we have to do. See, a lot of our trekking trail, it's not in a very good condition right now. So we have enough time to improve those trekking trials where all those people, whoever those porters, yakmen, they are jobless right now. Government can fund them, send them to all those mountains, all those places where they can clean those areas. So we can come up with other destination. So we have enough time, I feel. And also now Sikkim, we don't have any positive case right now. So in future, we have to be ready with so many tourists coming. Are we ready for that? I want to question that also. We have to question ourselves also. Are we ready for that? Because it seems some of our senior member from our association, they are getting calls from their associate from different parts of the world, where usually they send their tourists to Uttarakhand, Manali or Rajasthan. They are calling them and us saying, now in future, you are going to get a lot of tourists. Why don't we make a package tour right now? So this is how other travel agents also, they're approaching us. So we hope our government will hear our like whatever problems that we are facing. So we are just waiting.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Yangchen. So yeah, so this is a more in terms of like holistically, it looks like the entire industry, because all the graphs and everything shows that tourism and the allied industry like transportation, travel, because travel itself, I mean, social distancing is one of the key things that you have to do in order to kind of like, brace yourself, or rather prevent the COVID, right? So, and if that is the case, most of tourism is going to be very difficult, because it involves somebody actually physically traveling and staying in a place, etc. So yes, definitely. But however, there are, at the end, probably I can share a little clip of how Shanghai has opened up. So Shanghai's the Disney World has just opened up yesterday, and so they've kind of like taken up all these, like the trust thing. They've taken up all the sanitation, and also now considering hygiene 2.0, extreme hygiene. Like we're taking precaution for your own safety plus the safety of anybody else that you come in touch with. It has also become paramount, and they've kind of set up a different kind of protocol. Having said that, the government, I think, has also in Sikkim, the tourism department and government has basically initiated cross interstate tourism, right? Not interstate, intra, within the state, from district to district. I think that's a good initiative. And on that point, I would like to call upon Gyatso Anum. Hello,
Yeah.
can you hear me? Are you there? Yeah, okay. So yeah, please, I want you to come in from a perspective of, by his introduction, Gyatso is very famous in Sikkim. He owns and operates one of the most marquee homestays called Mayallyang, where I think it's very well received. Even the royal family of Norway was there. No, from Norway.
Yep.
Norway. Yeah. So they were also there. So, and he's also been an activist, an environmentalist, an activist, a social entrepreneur. So Gyatso, I want you to come with that and also bring in how we can balance all the ecology, the whole tourism thing, and in context with COVID. How you see all of that evolving and how we can go forward. Please, your time.
Yeah. First, thank you for the invitation. And yeah, I think pandemic, what it actually teaches us is it teaches us the true meaning of sustainability. This is how I want to put it forward. It teaches us that we all need to be sustained. We all need to move towards a sustainable, whatever you call tourism, sustainable development. And for past around 50 days now, we have been under lockdown. And I think probably in our generation, all of whoever here in the panel, in our generation, this is the first time in our lifetime that the whole humans are stayed indoors for such a long time. So with this lockdown, one thing is for sure, whoever is into tourism industries or in the tourism industry, it's going to be doubled once this lockdown is out. Once this thing, once this pandemic, it gets normal, which we ask that we are all talking about the normal, but I think the impact of the pandemic, if I have to put it down, is only I can feel because I have to now walk back to my village, 1 hour walk from the town where I am now, because the taxis are all now closed by 4, that I have to walk down. That's the only impact in my region I can say. Otherwise, we've been very, very, very fortunate to have all the ample space to explore ourselves in this lockdown. But I have some figures. In terms of the tourism, I have some figures which is astounding to see, to know all this. Between 2015 and 16, there were just around 7 lakh something, 50,000 visitors in Sikkim. But within 2 years, 2017, it doubled. So this figure, I got it from tourism department yesterday. It says that it's 14 lakh 26,127 in 2017. So by 2019, it was again 14 lakh something, 21,823. It has doubled it up. It has come, I mean, literally doubled. So a state which has 7,000 maximum population and double of its number, there are visitors. So you can imagine how tourism has been, affected by the COVID-19. And also, again, it's a very big. If I can't be on this side and that side now, because in this situation it's very tricky. We were complaining all these years about the airport not being there in the states. We were complaining about the railway. Just imagine if we had airport, if we had all this railway track in Sikkim, probably we were in a different situation today, So I think, this whole idea of sustainability, this whole idea of there's organic, which is fantastic. And there's also agroecology, which according to the landscapes and according to the, what fits in. I think Sikkim should really think about really now. I think it's pandemic is kind of like blessing in disguise for us. It's time to really retrospect ourselves, looking at the fragile ecosystem that we have, and also to think about the carrying capacity. This 14 lakhs is going to be double once we open tourism again. It's going to be double. And also, fortunately, unfortunately, Sikkim is always in this front run. We are always the first one. Even in this pandemic, we are the first one who has a zero case. I mean, you can take it in any way, in any form. But we have this problem. Then the challenge is of being in the first, and of always being the first, is also to how you sustain it. And also, the figures that I've just talked about it, the number of visitors, that shows that how much people are affected right now. So we are expecting a lot from the government now, the present government, who is yet to give a statement on the revival of the economy of the state, how long we can stay indoor, how long, because eventually it has to run. Because it's not surviving surviving against this virus. Its survival is with the livelihood. But there are people. I'm talking from one of the most remote region. I run a small homestay. Our livelihood all depends on the tourism, on the guests who comes. So I'm talking up from the income of 1,000 rupees. From the 1,000. I'm not talking about crores and lakhs, right? So there are so many lives being impacted. We are really looking forward to have something from the government, as the former MP has mentioned, that intervention of government is very important now. I think this is what we are all expecting government to come up with something, because I just read that from today, Goa, the government of Goa has started some to come up with some guidelines, and they will be going to open up the tourism. I think we all should. It's not that we should open it completely, but just to ease out for the immediate ease out. Why can't we have inter-district? Because since Sikkim is zero now, there are people in the West Sikkim or the part of Sikkim which wants to come and explore the North Sikkim. And because of the lockdown, everyone has a car to go out. And I think it's a blessing in disguise for our people to really understand our own place, culture, and our own landscape. I think we can do it with some strict guidelines and some strict policy. I don't know, but I think that's what I. And also, why not to? The Bhutan is such a perfect example. Just the neighbor country, just on the other side of us. So I think Sikkim, we can still go for, retrospect ourselves and, just come up with a concrete, plans for the future.
Okay. Thank you, Gyatso. So the main takeaways there, I think, from what you've conveyed, all around ecology and what you're saying. Also, I'm probably right if the tourism department, Yangchen has passed something, that will allow you for interstate travel. Yes, they have passed something for.
No, they have not passed.
Interstate, like they're going to promote. I think that's a very, very good initiative, by the way.
Yeah.
Because what Gyatso is also suggesting, that when people from West should be, because if there is zero COVID and there's no infection, there should be an opportunity or this thing for people to go from one district to the other to enjoy. Yeah. We should see our own place also. I mean, so we've seen all the beaches, all the big malls in the cities, etc.
Can I say something?
Please go ahead. And before I will ask, just interject, and I'll ask Sradha to come in, okay? Because it's her turn actually. Okay. But you can just interject quickly.
Okay. All right. Regarding this, we have already approached our government, and in fact, in the Commerce and Industry Department, I think from yesterday, they have already started this survey about different homestays in all the districts. So they are already doing this survey, and plus we have come up with another option. We did it during September 11 earthquake. LTC for government employees. For those government employee, like I'm talking about only Sikkim, all right? So they can move around. Before in 2011 earthquake, it was for 6 months. Now, like we have approached the government in our, like there is this point.
Makes sense.
To give LTC to government employees as well, so that they can roam, around Sikkim.
Okay, great. So on that note, Madam, I would want to invite Madam Sradha Sharma. Basically, she's representing SHRA. The SHRA is Sikkim Hotels and Restaurants Association. And with that, Madam, you have the floor. The context you kind of already understood, where it's coming from, COVID versus what impact it has had on the hospitality business, and what are the ways and the path forward. What are the protocols that you have been seeing, and what do you think, your opinion? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Karma. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am here today representing Sikkim Hotel and Restaurant Association. And today we are in this unprecedented time where we don't know what's going to happen, when the industry is going to be back on its feet. All I can say right now is we need to be positive, and we need to stay strong and plan for the future. That is the only way forward from here on. The biggest challenge post-COVID that I feel is to get the hospitality and the travel industry back on its feet. Now, we don't know whether it's going to be a year, whether it's going to be 2 years, but to get everybody, all the stakeholders, be it a taxi driver, be it a travel agent, be it a hotelier, everybody to be back on their feet is going to be the biggest challenge that the government and all the entrepreneurs and the business people of a state like Sikkim will face. As we all know that Sikkim is a state that is primarily dependent on tourism as an industry. So according to us, special focus needs to be given to such states where the primary economy is driven by tourism, and tourism has taken the biggest fall from the COVID pandemic. So a special focus needs to be given both by the central government and the state government to such states. Else it's going to be a spiraling effect on the entire economy of the state, and it could be quite difficult to recover after it's gone down for a bit. That is a point that I'd like to make. And we as an organization, as SHRA, we are getting together all the stakeholders like TAAS, SATO, and the taxi drivers, everybody. And we've made a plea to the government of Sikkim to, show us a direction, tell us what is going to happen so that, this uncertain times can be overcome, with strength, so that we know that tomorrow there is still a future for all of us. Having said all this, Sikkim as a state has always had a connectivity problem, be it road, be it air. So in the coming times, we hope that the state and the center government looks into this matter very, very seriously, because as we know it, this pandemic has changed the whole face of tourism as we know it today. Maybe in the way of how people are going to choose the destination from now onwards, maybe in the way how the hotels are going to operate, maybe in the way how people choose to travel. So we would really, really stress upon the point of connectivity to both all our governments, like to the center and the state government, to make us more connected with the mainland, so that our tourism in the future can move smoothly. Another thing is the government could help us in many ways post-COVID by making traveling more attractive for travelers, by maybe like reducing in taxes so that people are more motivated to travel. So having said this, I would request the government to pay attention to what we are trying to say to you today, so that tomorrow we can stand on our own feet and push the tourism industry forward. Because many of us have been working very, very hard over the past many, many years trying to get Sikkim into the tourism map of India. So one pandemic should not push us back to the Stone Ages. So hear the plea of all the stakeholders and help us stand back on our feet again with whatever measures, but don't give us the silent treatment, is all that I'd like to tell all the governments, be it the state or the center. Thank you.
Thank you, Sradha. So nicely put. Now, with that note, she made a couple of very interesting points in terms of where we stand, the impact, how we need to go forward. Obviously, that also takes off from what Hari had said earlier about hygiene and trust. I guess those are the two big currencies that have to be worked out, because if we cannot take care of hygiene and trust, then it becomes very difficult for somebody else to come in and also come into a room which you don't know who has been in previously, and what is the condition of hygiene, etc. On that note, I would like to welcome Mr. Ravi Pradhan. Mr. Ravi Pradhan, he runs one of the boutique hotels called Rhenock House, and also is the chair at ECOSS. So I think he wears both hats, and I would give you the floor. Sir, please, the floor is yours. You need to unmute. Yeah. There's a button somewhere on the top. Yeah, within that. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Karma. I'm as bad as this with technology.
No worries. We all learn. It's all a learning process. This is the time to learn. No problem. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, this is one of my first times in a webinar like this. But actually, this is absolutely unprecedented. And when I saw our bookings falling in the month of February, and I said, my God, what's happening? I really wasn't looking too much in newspapers. By the second week of February, all the inquiries started drying up. And then by February end, I mean, I had this 10-room property. I have friends all around. So I could understand the impact. And we just, since that time till now, I'm just feeling numb on one side and dumb on the other. I'm just hearing things from you, just now. So I think here, it's not only the tourism industry and people in the hotel sector it's all sectors, all humanity is involved here. And even when we do recover, we are so interrelated that, it has to be each one help the other. I think that is the attitude that we require in the future if we are to come out of this. Now, I was just looking at, COVID. This is a thing which we've never seen before. Even our scientists are baffled by this whole thing. And if we look back at a similar thing like HIV or dengue, till now, a vaccine has not been found for this. But protocols have been made through time. And now things like, the barber's shaving blade, or if we say the autoclaved injections and syringes, which were so when we were kids, and that's all history now. Now, humanity, we have been able to adapt accordingly, and that way the AIDS or the HIV, that could have become a pandemic, but it has been controlled. So now if we look this till such time a vaccine is developed for COVID, then I think it's very important that we follow these protocols and adjust into life accordingly so that, things are controlled. Now, looking into the hospitality industry as far as Sikkim is concerned, now, let us look from the positive side, because we're just looking at the negatives only. In my little experience of being an entrepreneur for the last 8-10 years, this feel like came more out of passion than out of anything else. Here, what I see is 80% of tourism in Sikkim, is controlled by individuals not living in this state. So this was one thing which I also wanted to bring out. At a later time, this is a time where I think we can say, and we can think for ourselves that once this thing is over, can't we, the people of Sikkim, try and run our own things ourselves, and thereby the sort of income which is coming to us, out of that, 80% of that was going out down the Tista. So this gives us a very good opportunity. Why? Because 80% of these properties which have been leased out, I think 50% of them is never going to show their face again back in Sikkim. Because the lease rents are there, then the labor problems. So that is going to close, forever. So the balance which is there, I think our local boys and girls should try and get into this and start a new beginning. Now when MP Saab mentioned about the of ecology and climate change, like I was looking at that video where from some place 300 kilometers away, they could see the part of the country of the Himalayan range somewhere, in I think Ambala somewhere, and the whole generation of people have never seen that before. So these are sort of things which COVID has taught us, at this time, that see how effective things can be if we look towards ecology in a correct fashion. And now the government, of course, has a very big role to play here, because if you are on a deathbed, it's pointless giving a medicine when you are dead. So here it's an ICU situation for, in fact, all the hoteliers. So if at this time that the Travel Agents Association and the Hotel Association, as they're rightly Yangchen and Sradha have put across, I mean, I think you should really go all out, respectfully, of course, and put the point across. Because here, 80% of the total hoteliers, I think, are small ones. We have the bigger ones in Gangtok and, of course, in the bigger cities, but now bigger towns in Sikkim. But there's 80% smaller ones, the homestays which are just coming up in the organized sector, and then small hotel like ours, and many driven properties, they're going to be very badly affected. So incentives like, like for the taxi boys who have just got those loans in such a big way, they're just languishing. And there are those other people who have loans to pay. And as you were saying, the rents which are due, even for our friends who have taken the hotels on lease, the lease rent. So all these are factors which I think at this time, the government should definitely look at. Like I was reading the US and other countries, of course, the more advanced countries are giving nearly 10% of the GDP, while the government of India is looking something at 1.5%, which is actually peanuts. And still nothing has come from the finance ministers yet. Having said that, I think we just have to look with a bit of optimism and be together. And the way to encourage tourism to start off could be to do, as you said, intra-tourism within. Like for instance, how many people in Delhi would have gone to the Minar? Like a prophet is usually not admired in his own hometown. So similarly, I mean, many people from South Sikkim would never have gone up to Lachung or seen the rhododendron blooming there, because they've seen it blooming down at Borse. So some sort of a intra-tourism would definitely give a good impetus. Yes.
Thank you.
And at this juncture, this stimulus package, of course, from the TAAS and the Hotel Association, I think you must put it up very well and very with a lot of vigor to the task force, so that things can happen in the correct fashion and things can get back. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karma. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so so we have a couple of questions. All those points that you're making very valid. I guess Sradha and Yangchen also are listening. That process is already on. I think in their respective ways, she tried to reiterate it twice with the government, at least locally in Sikkim. On a broader scale, maybe what happens at India, and that is something for the central government to decide. So just we have some time to take a couple of questions. There is one question which comes from Uttarakhand, which says, so our state, Uttarakhand, is basically dependent on pilgrimage and tourism, but due to COVID, the season is nearly about nil. All our sectors are badly affected, such as hotels, lodges, dhabas, restaurants, fruits vendor, homestay, taxi, transport, etc. Involved in supply of groceries, tour travel guides, porters. So there is, this is the only smokeless industry. I mean, that's a smokeless industry in the globe. How do we plan for the next phase post-COVID scenario? So we have tried to address this, I think, by some of the speakers, but I would like this question to kind of like just have a trickle-down effect from first, MP Sahab, why don't you take this? Then I would want to hear even Hari and Vikram also, and then we can trickle it down down further and distill it. Thank you.
So I think the points that are being made, in fact, to answer this particular question is that I think in the immediate future, the question of large number of people going for religious tourism or any kind of mass tourism is going to be a no-no. In fact, many people are not. I mean, it all depends upon how quickly, even within India, we are going to flatten the curve. I don't think the curve has been flattened, and tonight I'm sure we'll hear from the Honorable Prime Minister, something, in which direction this lockdown will take. But if we are looking at, say 2 years from now, when we have perhaps found some kind of a solution, then the points made by fellow panelists, need to be taken into account. As in, are we going to go back to the same old kind of tourism, or are we going to rediscover a new way of doing things in which hygiene and public health and the climate are all, or the ecology, as my our friend Ugin, our friend has put it from, Mr. Lepcha has put it from, that we really need to take care of our the way we do things in the future. So we probably don't need to look at the way we were doing things, the same things, but we need to look at this as a great opportunity in which we will be able to first exact a better value in terms of pricing of the products, so that you get a little higher rates and lower numbers, so that you can also have your social distancing and other things, because people are not going to travel the way they have. Behavior change is perhaps one of the outcomes of the COVID. A lot of behavior change will happen. Like, it has happened in after SARS, it happened in Korea, that everyone started wearing masks. So wearing masks is going to become almost like, a normal. It's a new normal. So similarly, there will be other social distancing behaviors. And so I believe that and so the government, in its wisdom, should look at all these factors and see if within the context of, say, the tourism, whether it's Uttarakhand or whether it's Sikkim or whether it is any other location, especially in the mountain states, are we able to rethink the tourism? And I like to take the point of Vikram, which Vikram has made, is that we definitely have to factor in sustainability, because sustainability is the big challenge. Sustainability is used as a very, loose word, but when you really drill down to what sustainable is, it really makes a lot of sense, especially as an outcome of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So okay, Hari. So then, I think the next, I think we will not percolate this down. It'll be easier if I just ask you another question, because I think from MP Sahab has just kind of like gone through that. But this is probably a question for you, in terms of because you like this transformation of the lower end, not, I would not call lower end, but the volume versus mass versus the niche, the quality tourism. So do you think that kind of transformation will make sense now, especially that because the COVID has reset a lot of, the existing ways of doing things. So is it a good indicator or an opportunity to look forward to? And is there a way that places like in the Indian Himalayan region that we can foresee something like this to transform? Hari?
Good question, Karma. I think, what I see is that, and I want to link this question to the previous question, because I think there's something very interesting there. So there are some destinations where the offer is inherently mass tourism, right? Where like for example, pilgrimages, very popular, very major pilgrim centers of India are not going to be niche places. They're going to be places where enormous numbers of people will just by definition want to go, right? So and therefore those will remain, I think, huge magnets of mass travel. Obviously, which essentially means two things. One is that, from a demand perspective, Uttarakhand, for example, will never have a problem of demand fundamentally, but they will definitely have to worry about how people will think about, traveling, transport, and stay in a mass travel situation, right? From a hygiene perspective. So, how do you handle hygiene when you have mass, huge numbers of people coming during, short periods of time? Is going to be their challenge. I don't believe demand is actually going to be their challenge after a certain period is over. So that's one point. So the reverse of that, or to some extent, a very different aspect of that would be how it plays out in Sikkim, for example. I personally think that, from all I can see of Sikkim, so Sikkim today does have a degree of mass tourism because of its natural beauty. But I think as a destination, it's cachet, and I think this has come out in many discussions we've had before. And I think the point that Vikram made today as well, it's differentiating cachet, right? Differentiation with other places that are competing with it is really extremely unique and extremely relevant for a niche audience out there, right? And both within India and outside India. So, and I think that opportunity remains. It's a big opportunity for Sikkim. It has one big challenge that today Sikkim has a mass tourism setup, and to transform that setup into becoming something that is a bit more or a substantially more niche, boutique-y, much more experiential, much more broad spread, widespread in the way we think about the nature of experience, etc. There's a whole series of things that you have to do to craft that new proposition. It does mean that a lot of change will have to happen from where it is today. And I think that, in my mind, we would never have made that change if we did not have a discontinuity like this. It would never have happened. So in some ways, maybe the discontinuity is good. It enables us to look at a much more niche and a boutique kind of approach. It's definitely going to be a whole lot more sustainable. And I think also, enables us to present the real underlying tourism potential and power of Sikkim. So yeah, so that's how I see the difference between some destinations that are mass and some destinations that inherently have a more niche potential.
Yeah. Thank you, Hari. So I have a very interesting question for Yangchen and Gyatso, but before that, I'll come to Vikramji. Basically, I mean, looking at how we are currently, this also takes up from earlier on, the first question that I'd asked you, remember about as businesses, so tourism is the core, right? So for example, tourism is the core for the livelihood of indigenous people in Sikkim. Now, if there are so many restrictions and if the volume or the quantity or the quality of the businesses takes a dip, and demand is already on a dip side. So as entrepreneurs with the existing infrastructure, now they have this huge hotel, right? Currently, right now, you're still allowed to do some kind of quarantine facility that the government allows to some 3-star, 4-star, 5-star if they can afford it, or to some non-starred hotels also. So government is allowing that kind of quarantine facility. You pay some minimum amount, and these all over, even Karnataka here, they do this all over the place. All the Taj hotels and they've tied up. But this for them is also like a part of their community outreach, CSR kind of thing. But if entrepreneurs with the infrastructure that is there and with the challenges of like what Yangchen said, right, meeting month-to-month issues, all of this that is there a way that this can be pivoted with the capital that is already being deployed, with the infrastructure that is already existing? Is there a way to pivot it into something that with minimum disruption in this thing, that you can still have, even though you don't reap huge benefits, you can still maintain the business, you can still employ people, the people that you already have? Is there a way that you can pivot it in that particular way?
So very clearly, there are three things that entrepreneurs can do in this situation. The first one is, I think one needs to look at all the possible government schemes which are floating around. And I think on a regular basis, the government is coming up with schemes to really help entrepreneurs. And of course, there's a lot more to be done. But I think at least there are certain schemes with respect to the loans and respect to how entrepreneurs can be helped. I think they're coming, and some of them are on the way. One needs to really make sure they're up to date with that, and there's information available online. The second is, and I think we are looking at this as not like a 5-year problem. I think this could be maybe a maximum of 2-year problem in terms of really struggling with your cash flows and coming back into action, right? So things may start looking a little different 18 to 24 months from now, but I think one has to really survive during that time frame. In that time frame, I think there's an opportunity to look at who could be your potential customers, and is there a way to change your business model? And I look at, in this scenario, 2 potential sources of money, as I would call it, not necessarily customers, but to create capital for you. One is the government. Government itself is one of the biggest customers right now. In fact, most of the startups we are working with, one of the things we are guiding them on is that if you have excess capacities, see if you can use those capacities to service what the government needs. For example, the government is asking for PPE equipment. Can you utilize your facilities to somehow meet that demand? Government is asking for quarantining facilities. Can you really support your facilities, provide your facilities with support for that? And things like those, so government is a big customer right now, and one has to see how they can utilize their capacities. The second source of capital is a lot of corporates have actually gone into the mode of really supporting through their corporate social responsibility, and there's a lot of budgets that are being allocated to help the people who really need help. So I think is that one needs to figure out if there's a way to help specific class of people who can where you can provide food, health, shelter, the necessities, right? Where if you can form an NGO or an organization where if you pitch that to corporates, you would find some kind of support depending on who you're pitching to. So I think one needs to think slightly differently for the next 18 to 24 months to really sustain. And then the third part is, while you're doing all this, don't forget that your core is in tourism and travel, and you would eventually want to stay there. But you may want to come back with a repositioned strategy where you don't forget to continue your engagement with your customer. This is an opportunity to continue to build your brand. In fact, if you haven't done that in the past, I have seen some of the campaigns, for example, where a travel company is actually, very aggressively, they created these videos which say, just stay at home, don't travel. The travel company is telling the customers, don't travel, just stay at home, keep distance, you should not be going out. And, it's amazing way to brand themselves. And, some of these companies people may not even have heard of before. And now, because they're engaging with their customers like this, when the things come back, you have a much higher chance of bouncing back faster as compared to others. So I think these are 3 things which I would recommend that entrepreneurs should do.
Thank you. And I really like the idea of basically, pivoting into like PPE, hand sanitizers, I guess, because Sikkim we have a lot of alcohol. I think you can't put that alcohol directly, but you need some kind of, industrial spirit or something like 70%, right? So you can deploy that, mix it with aloe vera, you have hand sanitizer. I think those, that kind of pivot is very nice, especially masks and all self-help groups that are making masks, face shields, those, because there's the demand for that, right? And the demand nobody is being able to meet right now. Yangchen and all, they've been doing a fantastic job. Also that through helping hands that I know of, I'm aware. And I would like to appreciate their effort in Sikkim that they've been doing. She's been, most of the time that I call her, she's running around trying to fix that issue. But I'm not going to talk about that, Yangchen. Believe it or not, for Yangchen and Gyatso, I have a very interesting question. And the question is, it comes to you both. And the question is, are you prepared for new guests? Okay. And what are the safety measures you have designed? It comes in 3 parts. And the third question is part of the second question. And have you designed any, or have you thought about any of these kind of designs, safety measures for hygiene 2.0 that you've kind of taken into consideration if you need to welcome new guests? If today somebody just comes, say Vikram comes, how will you be able to keep him safely is the question, sir. Yangchen can start first, then Gyatso.
Okay, actually, the thing is, recently we received a message from Make My Trip. So they have come up with this health hygiene. So I don't know about other people. I am going to follow this because whatever they have mentioned, it's very good. Like they have this safety and hygiene hotel certificate, which they're going to provide if you are registered under them. So no, I mean, right now our government, we have not come up with any guidelines because they are busy with some like other issues right now. So slowly we have approached the government. So let's see. But I am ready.
So the question was for an individual capacity. In your hotel, how would you be able to like welcome any new guests?
Yes, I am ready. Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah, so that's
yes,
the question,
yes.
right? So you follow the Make My Trip protocol.
Yes,
so same thing
yes.
goes to Gyatso, I think. So I will ask Gyatso also the same. If you need, you want to add something to that, Yangchen? No?
No, that's it.
Okay, I'll ask Gyatso the same question. So Gyatso, so that question goes to you also. So that's the 2-part question about have you designed any hygiene 2.0 keeping COVID in mind, and are you ready to welcome guests, and how will the guests can feel secure? I mean, with the new consideration. Inside the state, I think there's not much of a problem, but outside the state, how would you consider that? Yeah, please go ahead. You're on mute. You're on mute. You need to unmute yourself, so please.
Yeah. So yes, am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible. You are audible. You are audible.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm prepared to host Mr. Ravi Pradhan, of course, and Yangchen, and whoever. But basically, what I personally put forward in the earlier session is, I'm with the idea that you need to ease out the livelihood, the people, the majority of people who are dependent on the state. So I'm talking about the district to district people. We also, I think, slowly since past 10 years we have become a tourist destination, I guess now. I mean, so our people are also traveling, going abroad, going within the country. So this is an opportunity for our people to explore our own region, right? So I'm ready to host these people, of course, with all the guidelines, with MHA guidelines, with masks to be compulsory, and all the hygiene guidelines are there. But then the question is, it's about Sikkim is today no single case. It's a green zone. So somebody needs to really understand what is green zone. When there is no case of virus inside the state, then I think if we follow the basic rules, guidelines of the COVID-19, I think we should be okay. And I mean, we can't just run and stay with the fear of the virus. I think we have to learn to live with this virus. I mean, we can't just run. So and for how long? I mean, I'm sure it's going to stay for a couple of years unless we find vaccine of it. So I think it make sense to really open up within the inside the within this district, move around. People, I mean, students will be happy to, you know, explore different regions, different. I mean, we have so much of potential, you know, to offer. We have so much to offer to our own people, you know, be it a hiking, be it a camping, be it a angling, be it a trekking, be it a homestay, be it a farming, you know, organic farming, which is so popular. Each district has its own beauty and its own produce, its own way of farming. So, you know, we can open it up for institution also, you know. So yes, I'm ready to host Sikkimese folk who are there in Sikkim. Yeah.
Yeah, very good point made, Gyatso. Okay, so please don't feel left out, Hari and Vikram. He's saying Sikkim zero COVID. So obviously, only right now he can welcome only people from Sikkim, but obviously not not anybody from outside. So on that note, so I have a question for Sradha now. So this Sradha, so the intra-district movement, right? So how is that going to impact revenue if there are no tourist outflow? I mean, you know, inflows from outside the state. So what would be the impact in terms of numbers? Do you think that only if we promote intrastate, how will the numbers impact dramatically? So if you've had like about 100 people in your establishment, to what extent you would have to cut down to service only the local intra-district people? Your answer.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So what I feel is right now the homestays that have been allowed to operate within the state, I mean, for tourists within the state, it is going to start some economic activities, you know, for people. I mean, it's better to have some revenues coming in than zero, I guess. But I don't think it's going to make that big an impact. It's going to make a little bit of impact, but not to the extent that we are thinking about. So, I mean, like for tourism to really to earn revenues for the state, or to have economic movement starting in the state again, we need tourists coming from outside, definitely. This is going to help a little bit, but not too much, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, so now I have, I think we are running out of time, but I have a final question for Mr. Ravi Pradhan, post which we'll just conclude by this thing. So the question to you, sir, is an interesting question that has been put forth by Shyam. Okay, so is it possible to create a cooperative movement in Sikkim for the tourism sector? So this might help make it possible to reduce or restrict the number of visitors, but might make sure that everyone benefits from tourism. So what do you think about this? Do you think so this is something that is plausible? Do you think so this is something that can be worked out?
You mean a cooperative movement for tourism?
That's the question to you, yeah.
Hello. Karma, that question, to have a cooperative movement for tourism in Sikkim?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, for the rural areas, this would be really good, because marketing is one very important factor for rural areas. In the urban areas where the connectivity, the network is there, things are okay. But for the rural areas, it really becomes very difficult for any of the homestays or guest houses, you know, to market. Yes, and I think it is very pertinent, yes. In this whole situation, one thing I wanted to mention was, you know, like at this juncture, this problem of retaining the staff. Now, this is my personal experience. You have staff which have retained for the last 8 years, 10 years, and they know exactly how you're operating, what is required in your place. And now a time has come where the second month, it becomes difficult for you to give salaries. But I think if you wait on both the scales, it would be better to negotiate with them, tell them, give them at least 60, 70%, retain those staff. And that's the thing I feel for all the hotels. Because later, once this thing, it may ease out suddenly, or it may ease out with a bit of time. If you do not have your workers, then to realign and get back into action would be very difficult. I think that's an important one. And another thing which a hotelier could perhaps do, as this COVID eases out, or start thinking now, is, if you have any other things like, you can diversify within your own space. Like suppose you have enough space and you are just doing a hotel, you can do all day breakfast. If you have a bit of lawn, a bit of car parking space, those sort of things could be of help also, even now when things are slightly easing out. So that would also add into the new revenue. So I think you have to think a bit out of the box to, get going. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi. So we don't have much time right now because we've kind of concluded our time on this webinar. However, for the last one final thing, because we've very contextualized it to Sikkim, for places other than Sikkim, you have to extrapolate and derive your own narratives out of this. But for Yangchen and Sradha, I think there is a recommendation that for tours and basically tour agents, etc., for setting up a grievance cell and also the hotels, right? So is there a grievance cell or something like that you all have at TAAS and as SHRA? You all have set up something like that, grievance cell?
Today we had this meeting with the, we have this our party, we have this SKM tourism wing we have. So with them also we had a meeting regarding this. So yes, we are going to by today all the names of those people will be there. So once when it'll be finalized, then we are going to.
Okay, good. So yeah, thank you. Then Sradha, yeah, just go ahead. Do you have
Yeah, with regards to SHRA, I mean, we are always in touch with our members. We have a WhatsApp group where everybody with their grievances can just put it forward, and we do take actions and cognizance of the same.
Okay, so thank you, because on that note, I mean, if there's anybody that has to get in touch with you all in terms of their own grievances, etc., can do so, and I think that will help. So we finally come to the conclusion of our small this conversation, town hall, whatever you want to call it, on the future of tourism and how COVID has basically impacted us so dramatically. I would like to thank all my panelists, former MP Saab, Hari, for taking out the time, Vikram ji, Yangchen, Sradha Ju. Last moment we added Sradha in. Sradha, thank you so much for representing SHRA in this. It's very crucial. Thank you very much. Ravi ji, thank you very much. Gyatso ji. And to all our partners. We couldn't go live on Facebook today on Sikkim Chronicle, but I think this will be webcast later on. After the recording will be thrown on, will kind of be cast into the Facebook, whatever. I mean, I think it's called live only, Facebook Live or something like that. So it'll be cast there. So I would like to thank personally the entire team of Sikkim Chronicle also, and especially Nanalal Bhai, Yugen, Yugen and the entire team, Nirmal, Kavita and all, that they've basically, kind of given us the platform also to kind of take this voice and the ideas forward. And ECOSS, our partners, ECOSS, the Lepcha Center of Climate Studies, Indian Institute of Science, Future Earth, DEMI, and Help COVID India, and everybody else, including Smriti, Namrata, Amrita, the entire gang, Golan, Prerna, whoever have helped to put this together. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Irrespective of whatever the situation that we are in and however we are going to come out, I would like to share one small point of optimism, especially because now we're speaking in the context of Sikkim. Sikkim, the only state, I think it's phenomenal because globally you can see it's very bad. Even in developed countries like US, Spain, etc., it's very, very bad. Italy, Sikkim, the only place, zero COVID. Somehow we've managed that. All that congratulations goes to not only to the state and the government and the administration, it also goes to the people that have actually complied. There was a fantastic video. Somehow I don't have the time right now to show you, given by, it's an IPR video, but somehow due to paucity of time, I'll be unable to show it. Having said that, I would want to still hope that we will come to better days. If this might be trying time till the vaccine is come, it might be a little bit trying, but after that, it will be good. And as the Vulcans used to say in a Vulcan salute, I have this to tell you: long live and prosper. We'll have a better day. And thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Participants, yeah.
Thank you.